This story is the perfect example of why you shouldn't go through anyone's laptop because all you're going to do is either one, hurt your feelings, or two, scare yourself. Lip gloss on so I can run this mouth. Now let me focus. Scary story time, Fright Night Files. This email was sent to me by Joanne. I'm just going to read it as it is because it is lengthy, but you're going to want to hear all of it because it's very unsettling. My mother passed away in March. She lived alone, and when we went to clean out her house, my brother found her laptop under the bed. It wasn't password protected. We were going through it looking for any documents, bank accounts, things like that. When I found a folder on her desktop, she'd simply labeled read last. Inside was one thing, a saved email thread. I'm going to send it to you in order. I need somebody else to have seen this because my brother refuses to talk about it and I can't stop thinking about it. I know this is a lot, but I don't know what else to do. Now, the first email says, from Margaret, and then she redacted who it was sent to. And it says September 4th. I don't know if this is real, but I'm writing anyway. I found this address written on a piece of paper inside a library book I checked out. The note said, if you have been having the dream, right here. Tell us what you saw. You are not alone. I have been having the dream for 11 weeks. I don't know who else to tell. My daughter thinks I'm not sleeping well. My doctor says it's grief. My husband passed in June, and that the mind does strange things when we lose someone. I have accepted all of that, but the dream is the same every time, and it has details in it that I don't know how to explain away. In the dream, I am in my house, but the house is wrong. Not visually wrong. It looks exactly right, but the rooms are in the wrong order. The kitchen is where the bedroom should be. The back door opens to the front door. I know something is off, but I can't locate the error. I walk through every room trying to find what's wrong and never find it. At the end of the dream, every time, I find a room I don't recognize. It's not a room that exists in my house. It's small. It has one window, and there is a chair facing the window. Someone is sitting in the chair with their back to me. I can never see their face, and every time right before I wake up, the person in the chair says one sentence. The same sentence every time. I'm not going to write what they say, not yet. I want to know first if anyone else has seen this room. Redacted to Margaret, September 6th. Yes, we have seen this room. There are currently 84 people in this correspondence who have described the same house, the same wrong order of rooms, the same small room at the end. 61 of them have described the chair. 47 have described the figure. You are not losing your mind. You are not grief dreaming. We don't know yet what this is, but we have been collecting accounts for 3 years, and the consistency across all of them is something that cannot be explained by coincidence or shared cultural imagery. Please tell us what the figure says. It's important. Not everyone hears it, and we need to understand who does and why. You're not alone in this room. The correspondence. The woman that emailed me said, there are 9 more emails where my mother goes back and forth with this address asking questions. Who runs this? How did you find these people? What do you mean by correspondence? They give partial answers. I'm going to skip to the one where she tells them what the figure says because that's the one my brother and I got stuck on. September 19th. And then she titled it What It Says. All right, I've decided to trust you. Here's what the figure in the chair says every time, word for word. I have it memorized because I've heard it 83 nights in a row now. It says, you already know the way out. You found it once and you forgot. The room remembers even if you don't. That's it. That's all. And then I wake up. What does it mean? Do others hear the same sentence? Margaret. September 19th. What it says. No, that is not what the others hear. The others hear their own names spoken once. Some hear nothing at all. A small number, fewer than 10 across all our accounts, hear a full sentence. Those accounts concern us the most because the people who hear sentences are the ones who eventually find the door. We need to ask you something important. In the dream, when you are walking through the wrong house, have you ever tried to leave, gone to the front door or a window and tried to actually exit? The correspondence. On September 22nd, yes, every time. Every door I open leads back inside. I've tried windows too. They open, but there's nothing outside them. Not darkness, just nothing. Like the house is the only thing that exists and everything beyond it is just the idea of an outside. Why does finding the door concern you? That sounds like a good thing, Margaret. Then they write back on September 25th. We have had 11 correspondents find the door. Of those 11, 7 stopped writing to us within 2 weeks of finding it. Not unsubscribed, not a goodbye. They simply stopped mid-conversation and did not respond to follow up. 2 of the remaining 4 told us what is on the other side of the door before they also stopped writing. We're not going to tell you what they described. Not because we want to withhold it, but because we have a theory, which we cannot yet prove, that knowing changes what you find there. We don't want to contaminate your account. What we will tell you is this. The 2 people who described it said it was not frightening. They said it felt like a place they had been before. One of them said it felt like the place you are just before you were born, which we understand is not a thing a person can remember, and yet she said it with complete certainty. Margaret, we want to ask you to do something difficult. We want you to try, the next time you have the dream, to go back to the small room, to sit in the second chair. There's always a second chair, even if you haven't noticed it, and wait. Not to look for the door, not to wake up, just wait. We believe the figure has something else to say to you. We believe it has been waiting for you to stop leaving. The correspondence. Well, Joanne, she said there are 14 more emails after this one where my mother talks about trying to do what they asked. She described the dream changing, getting longer, the rooms multiplying, the figure in the chair beginning to turn. She sounds excited in a way that reading it now scares me more than anything else in this thread. She sounds like someone who has found a project, something to focus on after losing my dad, and I think that's maybe what made her keep going. The last email she sent is dated February 9th. She died March 2nd. Her doctor said it was her heart. She had no history of heart problems. This is her last email. February 9th. I found the door. I want to write this down while I can still feel it clearly. Last night I sat in the second chair. The figure didn't speak for a long time. We just sat there together facing the window and the nothing outside it. And then it reached out without turning, without looking at me, and it put its hand over mine on the armrest. The hand was very cold and very familiar. I knew the hand. I've held that hand 10,000 times. I don't need to tell you whose hand it was because I think you already know. Because I think some of you have been there too and felt the same thing and been too afraid to write it down. Said with his voice exactly, you found it once and you forgot. You were here when you were very small, before the world had a name for you, before you knew what a door was. You are allowed to come back, but not through the dream. The dream is just how we get your attention. I asked where the door actually was. It said, he said, and I'm writing this exactly, you've been standing in it. And I woke up and I was standing in the middle of my bedroom. I hadn't sleepwalked in 60 years, not since I was a child. I was standing facing the wall, and on the wall there was a mark I have never seen before, about the height of a doorknob, like something had been pressed there from the outside, from the other side. I'm not scared. That's what I most want to say. I expected to be scared, and I'm not. I feel like I've been looking for something my whole life without knowing I was looking. And knowing its shape makes the looking feel worth it. I'm going back tonight, Margaret. There's no reply from the correspondence to the last email. I tried replying to the address myself. It bounced. The domain doesn't exist anymore. My brother thinks we should leave it alone. He said mom was grieving and she found some online group and it gave her comfort and she's gone now and we should let her have it. He's not wrong, but here's the thing, I can't let go of it. While we were cleaning out her bedroom, the day we found her laptop, I was taking down the curtains so we could wash them, and I saw the wall behind where the curtains had been. The wall that had been directly in front of her if she was standing in the middle of the room facing it. There was a mark on the wall about the height of a doorknob, a small flat impression in the drywall, like something had pressed against it very hard from behind. The mark was on the wrong side of the wall. The wall is an exterior wall. There is nothing behind it but the outside. My mother said she wasn't scared. I'm choosing to believe her. I have to, because the alternative, the thing I lie awake thinking about, is that she found the door and she went through it. And what I've been trying to decide every night since we buried her is whether that's the most terrifying thing I've ever heard or whether it's the most beautiful. I don't know which one it is. I don't know if I ever will. I haven't been sleeping well lately. Have you heard of this dream before? Could you share this and see if anyone else has experienced this or knows of someone that has? Any of you out there? Do you know what she's talking about? Have you heard this dream before? Have you had this dream? I haven't. I don't know what's going on. If you got any information or any questions about this or you want to discuss this more, let me know in the comments. I snuck into a vampire's house, not once, but twice. Look, another fun lip gloss that looks like something it's not, but lip gloss on so I can run this mouth. Now let me focus. Scary story time, Fright Night Files. That's how the email started out that I got sent to me this morning. And it is wild. So I'm going to read this to you and I need to know what you think because it's got a complicated twist at the end. I debated on which creator to send this to, but after researching, I found several videos of you talking about vampires, so I wanted to tell you about the time I not only found a vampire, but I broke into their house not once, but twice. Let me start by saying I'm not the kind of person who stumbles into things. I don't accidentally end up anywhere interesting. When something worth talking about happens to me, it's because I went looking for it. I do my research, I make a plan, and I execute. So when I tell you what happened last September, I need you to understand I knew exactly what that property was before I ever set foot on it. I went there on purpose and I'd do it again. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I've been researching anomalous properties, places with documented histories that don't add up for about 6 years, not as a hobby, as a serious, methodical pursuit. I have a spreadsheet, I have a filing system, I have a cousin named Darren who works in title records and owes me approximately 11 favors, so I called one in. And I know. Let me just stop and say I know what you're thinking and saying, but just hang with me. I had been tracking this particular property for almost 8 months before I decided to move on it. 11 ownership transfers in 40 years, every single one an estate transfer, meaning every owner died in possession. No mortgage liens, no bank involvement, no auction listings, just a piece of land in the middle of nowhere that quietly consumed people and then sat there waiting for the next one. I knew what I was looking at. I'd seen patterns like this before. Though never this clean, never this consistent. I told Darren we were going. I told him to clear his Saturday, and when he asked why, I said, because I found one, a real one, and I'm not waiting anymore. He didn't ask what I meant by a real one. Darren has known me a long time, long enough to know exactly what I meant. We got there at 8:30 in the morning. I had the property records, the ownership history, satellite images, and 2 years of county meeting minutes that reference the property exactly 0 times, which, let me just pause. I don't even know why this is added in there because it doesn't really have anything to do with something about meetings that happened in the past. I don't know. But then he said that there's neighbors that have filed noise complaints in the 90s, but not since. So anyway, I had it all printed and organized in a folder in my backpack. I like to do everything a certain way. I'm very meticulous, as you can see. I like to have control of the situation. Every detail matters, every variable accounted for. That's how I operate. I know. The house itself almost made me laugh, honestly, because it was so normal looking. White paint, 2 stories, a garden on the side with things still growing green in September. That's the detail that confirmed everything for me before I even touched the door. Nothing grows like that in early fall without intervention. Something was tending that garden. Something that had no problem with the cold. Okay. The front door was unlocked. I'm not going to pretend that didn't send a chill through me because it did, but I pushed it open and walked in first because that's who I am and I wasn't about to let Darren beat me through the door of the most significant thing I've ever found. Yep. Okay. Yeah. Inside was exactly what I expected and nothing like what I was prepared for. Furnished, clean, books on the shelf in at least 4 languages, French, Latin, 2 others I haven't been able to identify despite sending photos to 3 separate, academics, people he knows, I guess, or whatever. No refrigerator, no food, no appliances. The absence of everything related to eating was so deliberate it felt like a statement. And then the basement door. 3 deadbolts inside the house, keeping something from coming up. Okay. I stood in front of that door for a solid 2 minutes, and I want to be honest with you, that was the first moment I felt something other than excitement, not fear exactly, more like the specific feeling you get when you've been right about something for so long and suddenly the proof is right in front of you and it's bigger than you thought. I'd theorized about the door. I'd read accounts from 2 other people who described something similar at properties with comparable histories, but standing in front of it was different. I didn't open it, not that day. That was a calculated decision, not a scared one. He wanted to make that clear. He's not scared. I hadn't brought the right equipment, and I don't make moves I'm not prepared for. Darren was documenting everything. I was doing a final sweep of the main floor when I looked out the back window and saw the figure standing by the tree. He was just standing there. dark clothing, no age I could assign to him. The stillness was the thing. Not the stillness of someone standing still, but the stillness of something that doesn't need to move, that has all the time in the world and knows it. He was looking directly at us, not scanning the property, not watching the road, us, like he'd been there the whole time, watching us walk and work through his house and had decided we'd seen enough. I held eye contact with him for what I'd estimate was 15 seconds. I want to be clear, I held it. I didn't look away first, he did. Okay, all right. Then I told Darren it was time to go, not because I was scared, he says that a lot, but because I'd gotten what I'd came for and there was no tactical advantage in pushing further that day. We had the documentation, we had the photos, and I had everything I needed to plan the next visit properly. Because here's what Darren didn't know when we drove home. I was already planning on going back. He went back on his own, Darren did, 3 weeks later and nearly had a heart attack, which I love my cousin, but that's what happens when amateurs improvise. When I went back, I did it right. And what I found in that basement is something I haven't told anyone until now. But here's the thing. I like to have control. I like to do things my way. So, if you want to hear the second story, the part about what happened when I went back, I need you to post this video today, April 13th, by 10 o'clock Central Standard Time. That's non-negotiable. Do that, and I'll send you what's in the basement. I've got this up way before 10 o'clock tonight, so I know you're watching this. What happened in that basement? Also, if something is locked downstairs and they're there in the daytime, what is in the yard? Who is in the yard? If there's a follow-up story, he clearly found something. So what's going on in there? Do you want to know what's in the basement? What's in the basement? If a scary story sounds smart, it's not real. Gloss on for this late night rant because I've had it. So now I'm going to focus. Scary story time, Fright Night Files. If a scary story is well written, it's got to be fake, right? Well, okay, let me read to you one that's not well written, and let's see how you feel about that. This is all one sentence, by the way. Well, technically, there's no capitalizations and there's no period at the end, but here it goes. I'm going to read it exactly how it is, and then at the end of it, I will retell it to show you the difference. Okay, so one time I was laying in my bed and it was really late and I was trying to go to sleep, but I couldn't because my room just felt weird and kind of off. And I remember looking over at my closet and the door was cracked open just a little bit and I was pretty sure I'd closed it, but I didn't really think too much about it at first because closets just do that sometimes, I guess. But then I kept looking at it and it just felt like something was standing there and was watching me. And I was like, okay, this is kind of weird, but also maybe I'm just tired or whatever. And I pulled the covers up a little higher, but then I swear I saw something inside and I just kept staring at it. And the longer I looked at it, the more it kind of looked like a shadow. And then the more I was like, maybe that's a person. I don't know. It's kind of weird looking and it's standing in my closet. But I was trying to tell myself it was just my clothes hanging up or something, but it didn't really look like that. And then I blinked and it looked like it was a little closer to me and to the door. And then I was like, wait, is the door still open or is the door shut? I wasn't for sure. I was just kind of laying there and I froze and didn't move and I didn't want to get up and close the door because what if something was actually in there? And I just kept watching it and I don't even know how long I was staring, but it felt like a long time. And then eventually I just rolled over and tried to ignore it, I guess, and I fell asleep at some point. And in the morning, everything was back to normal and the closet was closed and nothing was there, but it was still kind of weird. And yeah, that's it. But I saw a ghost, I think. Okay. Now let me retell it. I get this email from a girl. She said that she was in her bed. She was just doing her own thing at night. And then she remembers that she had closed her closet door. But then she looked over at it and realized that it was cracked a little bit. The more she looked at it, she noticed that something in there looked off, like a little weird, like maybe something was in there. And it kind of creeped her out a little bit. But then she thought, maybe, it's nothing. Maybe it's just my clothes or something like that. Maybe it is just nothing to worry about at all. But the more she looked at it, the more it looked like a person was standing in there. And then she noticed that whatever it was coming closer to her. And it almost looked like the door was opened more than it was before. So now she's really starting to freak out because she's convinced something has to be in her closet. But she was too scared to get up and go check. So she just tried to roll over and ignore it. And then at some point she finally fell asleep. And then when she woke up in the next morning, the closet door was shut and it was like nothing had ever happened. So now she's wondering, did she see a ghost? Do you see the difference? Do you see the difference? That's why it makes a difference and why stories are better when they're descriptive. If they're descriptive, it doesn't mean that it's fake because it sounds well written like a book. It means someone's actually taking the time to make you feel like you're there and you're witnessing stuff without someone just shooting a bunch of words at you like you would in a text. So that's the fucking difference. You're welcome. That's what we have to take and switch. So yeah, when I get a really good email that's well written, I'm going to read you the whole email because I don't have to brain rot and try to figure out what was actually being said and how can I tell this story in a way that people aren't like, what happened, what was said. Do you see the difference? That's why education is important. Punctuation is important. I broke into a vampire's house not once but twice, and I have a picture to prove it. Lip gloss on so I can run this mouth. Now let me focus. Scary story time, Fright Night Files. I think I need to clear up that these aren't sponsored. It's just me using a different lip gloss as a mic every story so that I can make myself use the abundance of lip glosses I have and let you guys know which ones are my favorite. But our vampire boy, he responded. And if you haven't seen the first one, go watch that one. This is part 2. First of all, I would like to say thank you for posting the first story when I asked you to. You're welcome. Now, as promised, here is part 2. 3 weeks after Darren's little unauthorized field trip, which again, he did without telling me, and I'm still annoyed about, I went back to the property, alone, on purpose, with a plan the way things should be done. I want to walk you through my preparation because I think it matters, and also because I want you to understand that I am not the kind of person who walks into something like this empty-handed. I brought a wooden stake. Hand sharpened, not something I bought, something I made, because if you're going to do something, you do it right. I had 2 vials of holy water that I'd gotten blessed by an actual priest. Well, yeah, that's who would bless it. Carrying on. Which was an interesting conversation I will not get into right now. Thank you. I had a silver crucifix that had belonged to my grandmother, which felt both practical and appropriate. I had a full bulb of garlic. Dude, which I know sounds ridiculous. Okay, he knows it. And I genuinely do not care what you think about that. Okay. Because the research supports it and I trust the research. You do you then. I had the UV light in my left hand and I was ready to use it. Skirt. Is that true? I need to look that up. This is what separates me from people who get hurt doing things like this. I don't go at midnight with a flashlight and a prayer. I go at 11 in the morning in full sun with a plan and the right tools. Methodical, controlled, always. I arrived at 11. High noon was the target, and I wanted to be inside and situated. Maximum sunlight, minimum activity. Every piece of research I had said the same thing. Daylight is your window, and the closer to midday, the better. Whatever was in that basement was going to be at its lowest possible state of consciousness, and I wanted to be in and out before the sun started dropping. Smart. That's smart. The front door was locked this time. I'd anticipated that. The basement window was my entry point. Dude, I'd clocked it on the first visit and confirmed the dimensions from satellite imaging. 45 seconds to open it, 15 to drop inside. All right. And I have to tell you, I've been in a lot of strange places. I bet you have. I researched a lot of properties with histories that don't add up, but the moment my feet hit the stone floor and my flashlight cut through that basement, I stopped breathing for a full 3 seconds. It hit me before I even saw anything. Sweet and thick and wrong. Like flowers laid over something rotting beneath them. Like something had tried to cover up what was really in that room and hadn't quite managed it. I pulled my collar over my nose and I kept moving because that's who I am. But I want to be honest with you. Please do. That smell alone almost sent me back out the window. Almost. I'm glad you stayed, because I want to hear what happened. And then my flashlight reached the center of the room, and I saw it. A coffin, handmade, elevated on a low wooden frame, centered in the room the way an altar is centered. Deliberate, intentional, like the whole room existed to hold it. No dust on it, none. The floor around it was thick with decades of dust. Ew. The walls were gray with it, but the coffin was clean, tended, cared for. Stop, because it's giving big Guillermo vibes from What We Do in the Shadows. I walked straight up to it. I took out my journal and I documented everything. Dimensions, wood type, the way the lid was fitted, the absence of any hardware or nameplate. Then I took out the vial of holy water and I let 3 drops fall onto the surface of the lid. I need you to stop whatever you're doing and really hear what I'm about to tell you, he says. The wood darkened where the drops landed immediately, like a burn, but without smoke, without heat. 3 dark spots that spread slowly outward from each drop like ink and water. I took 6 photographs, only 1 developed. I stood there and watched it happen, and I did not move, and I did not make a sound. Then I pressed my hand flat against the lid. It was warm. Not room temperature warm, like pressing your hand against someone's back while they sleep. That's very specific. And, okay, ew. Something in there was generating heat. Something in there had a body temperature. And then I heard it. Low, slow, rhythmic. I held my breath so I could hear it better, and I counted it against my watch. 6 beats per minute. A heartbeat. Coming from inside a sealed wooden box. At 11 in the morning in full daylight, when whatever this was should have been completely, totally, deeply unconscious. I looked that up afterwards. I'm glad you did, because what? I looked it up more times than I want to admit. A person in a medically induced coma has a resting heart rate of around 40 beats per minute. A hibernating bear runs about 8. What? I didn't know that. There is no living human being on this earth with a resting heart rate of 6. Yeah, I believe that. So what's in there? I did not step back. Brave. I placed my UV flashlight on the lid next to my hand, and I stood there and I breathed and I got myself together. Then I took out my crucifix and I laid it on top of the coffin. Nothing happened for about 4 seconds. And then, from inside the coffin, I heard a sound that I have never in my life heard anything like, and that I will hear for the rest of my life, whether I want to or not. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't a growl. It was somewhere between the two. Low and resonant and ancient and furious, muffled by the wood, but absolutely, unmistakably coming from something that was aware, something that knew the crucifix was there, something that was not as unconscious as it was supposed to be. I grabbed the crucifix back off the lid. The sound stopped instantly. My hand was shaking. I'm telling you that because I think it's important to be honest. I had just confirmed everything. I felt something I was not expecting, being in the presence of something that was fundamentally out of my league. No shit, dude. I was still processing that when the smell changed. Oh, he's gonna get you. He's coming. 1 second, it was the sweet rot smell from before. The next, it was metallic, sharp and cold, like a mouthful of pennies. We all know what that is. Like something ancient and predatory had just become aware of exactly where I was standing. And from directly above me, from the room where that basement door was, I heard footsteps. Run, dude. Should have been completely unreachable, and it was walking. Yeah, it's something else. Has he not clocked that there's 2? There's 2. Well, something's guarding it. Anyway, it's the room above me, and it stopped at the basement door. 3 deadbolts disengaged from the other side. Click, click, click. The door did not open. I had the UV flashlight in my left hand with my thumb on the switch. That's not going to do anything. That's not what's up there, I don't think. I had the stake in my right. I had positioned myself against the wall beside the coffin, not behind it, beside it, because I needed a clear angle of those stairs. I was ready. I told myself I was ready. And then from the other side of that door, right up against the wood, I heard breathing. like something pressing itself against a door and making a decision. And then, very quietly, so quietly I thought for a moment I'd imagined it, a voice. One word, not a shout, not a growl, conversational, almost gentle. It said my name. Well, I have never moved faster in my life than I moved towards that window. I don't remember climbing out. I remember gravel under my feet, and then I was at my car, and the sun was bright and enormous, and I stood in it for a full minute. What? No. What were you waiting for? Before I could make myself get in and drive. I was 3 towns away before I stopped shaking. I do have the photo, and I'm sharing it with you now. This is from the 3 drops of holy water on the coffin. Believe it, don't believe it, it happened. Something's out there that's like a vampire, but something different. And I don't think anyone knows what we're dealing with. What is it? This guy is something else, right? But what do you think? What would be like a vampire but not a vampire? I am so confused. A ghost at Pompeii made eye contact with me before screaming. Lip gloss on so I can run this mouth. Now let me focus. Scary story time, Fright Night Files. I'm a 34-year-old woman from Ohio who saved for 2 years to take a solo trip to Italy. I was just a tourist when I went to Pompeii. I just wanted to see it. Last September, I'd taken the train from Naples in the morning and spent most of the day walking the site. If you've never been, Pompeii is massive, way bigger than most people expect. I had maybe 45 minutes left, and I was making my way towards the exit when I passed the Garden of Fugitives. If you don't know what the Garden of Fugitives is, let me explain it because the context matters enormously. It's a real place inside the Pompeii archaeological site, a restored vineyard garden near the Porta Nocera, I'm probably saying that incorrectly, sorry, gate in the southeastern part of the site. In 1961, archaeologists discovered 13 people there who had died together during the eruption in 79 AD, adults, teenagers, and children, including an infant. They'd apparently run to the garden seeking shelter when Vesuvius erupted, and they didn't make it. The plaster of all 13 of them are still there, still in their original positions. It's really sad. They're kept in a glass enclosed shed within the garden itself to protect them from the elements. So most tourists walk past it fairly quickly. It's uncomfortable to look at, as I can imagine. 13 people frozen in the positions of their deaths, clenched hands, curled bodies, a mother near her children. Very sad. That detail tends to end conversations. By the time I got there, most of the other tourists had already moved towards the exit. I was one of the only people who actually paused at the garden. I stood at the viewing area outside the glass enclosure for a few minutes, and that's when I noticed the smell. I want to be careful describing this because I know how easy it is to sound like you're exaggerating. It wasn't a bad smell exactly. It was an earthy mineral, like fresh turned soil mixed with something sharper underneath, something I couldn't name. I assumed at first it was just the site itself, volcanic soil, ancient stone, whatever combination of things that makes Pompeii smell the way it does in certain spots. It was coming from one direction. And then I noticed the temperature had dropped, not gradually, noticeably suddenly, the way it drops when you step into a cold room, except I was standing outside in the open air on a warm September evening. To my left, maybe 10 feet away, standing just outside the rope barrier that runs along the edge of the garden path, was a woman. She was wearing a long dress, dark, heavy-looking fabric, completely wrong for a warm September afternoon. No bag, no phone, no sunglasses, nothing any tourist at an outdoor site in southern Italy in that heat would have on them. She was just standing there with her hands at her sides looking at the enclosure. I almost said something to her, just like some small talk or whatever you make with strangers at places like this, but something stopped me before I opened my mouth. I looked at her more carefully, and that's when I noticed she wasn't blinking. I know how that sounds. It sounds like some kind of detail I would add to make the story scary, but I watched her for what I would estimate was a full 30 seconds. She did not blink once. She was totally still in a way that made the hair on my arm stand up before my brain had even caught up with why. Turned her head away from the enclosure and looked directly at me. We maintained eye contact for about 15 seconds before she looked away at Mount Vesuvius. Looked at it the way that you look at something you recognize, the way you look at something you have a history with recognition. She stared at it for what felt like a very long time, but it was probably about 20 seconds, and then she screamed. Not a startled scream, not a scared scream, something older and more desperate than either of those things. The kind of sound that doesn't seem like it should be able to come from a human throat, raw and ancient and absolutely full of terror that had no bottom to it. It went through me like a current. I put both my hands over my ears. My whole body responded before my mind did, and every muscle locked. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I just stood there frozen while that sound tore through the late afternoon quiet of the garden. She threw her arms up over her face, both of them crossed over her head, elbows out, the exact position you'd throw your arms up if something was coming down on top of you, the exact position of someone shielding themselves from something falling from the sky. And then, I don't have a clean way to describe what happened next, so I'm just going to tell you what I saw. It started at her feet. The fabric of her dress at the hem just stopped being there. Not like she disappeared. Not like she faded. It was like watching something be consumed from the bottom up slowly, the way the edge of a piece of paper curls and blackens when it gets close to a flame. Except there was no flame, there was no smoke, there was no sound except for the scream, which had already ended, leaving a silence that was somehow louder than the scream had been. Her ankles, her legs, her waist, all of it just ceasing to exist inch by inch from the ground up, like whatever she was made of was being reclaimed by something underneath her, being like pulled back down into the earth that had held her for almost 2,000 years. Her arms were still raised over her head when the last of her disappeared. And then there was nothing. The path was empty. The garden was silent. The late afternoon light was still gold and long and beautiful and completely indifferent of what I had just watched happen 10 feet away from me. I don't know how long I stood there before I could make myself move. I know that by the time I got to the exit, my legs were shaking badly enough that one of the site staff asked me if I was all right. I told him I was fine. They died shielding their faces. They died exactly the way that woman looked when she disappeared. I think she's been reliving it for 2,000 years. And I think the only reason she stopped long enough to stand there and look through that glass is because somebody finally stopped long enough to actually see her. I don't know. I've been reading it to you, and it's just so sad and tragic what happened to all of the people of Pompeii. And has anyone else experienced a ghost of Pompeii? And why don't you hear more experiences about them? They died tragically. Clearly there are ghosts there, and I don't know why I'd never even considered it before.